All right, it's time to talk the stimulus. We've got a couple of big stories on the stimulus front. First, I want to quell some misinformation that's been floating around among YouTubers over the past few days about a new framework, a new bill, President Trump signing checks. There's been a lot of clickbait stuff floating around over the past few days that, there's new $1,200 checks that President Trump is sending out to people and signing. That's not true. That there's a new bill that's going to be voted on today. That's not true. None of that's true. What is true right now, according to my congressional sources in Washington, is that there is nothing going to happen before Election Day. Okay, what there is going to happen is a new stimulus framework today from what's known as the Problem Solvers Caucus. Now, who are these people? It's 50 people. It's dozens of members of the House, Republicans and Democrats, who've come together and have tried to work on legislation over the years. I think they started in about 2017. And Elizabeth Warren is on there. There's a number of other people who are involved in this discussions, at least on the Senate side and others. But look, bottom line is that they're trying to put together a framework that brings people back to the table. So this is not meant to pass, guys. Let's be very clear. This framework, which will become a bill maybe later today, is meant to be just a plan to get people back to the table in order for them to then come up with a bill, and then maybe they can hash it out and then maybe pass something that gets signed by the president. Do you think that that's going to happen before Election Day? No, it's not. Don't get our hopes up. But let me give you the meat of what this looks like. Okay, so the Problem Solvers Caucus unveiled this thing last night, and this is what's being handed around Washington right now. Here's the basic overview on this, is that they want to spend about $1.5 trillion overall. They would do testing and healthcare and money for states and local governments. This is the thing that was being handed around last night on Washington we got our hands on. Here's a closer look at some of the boosters, that there would be additional money, an additional $400 billion if the pandemic doesn't improve by 2021. They're called booster shots, basically. The new money would be 1.5, so it would almost total $2 trillion, which is what Republicans have not wanted, right? Previously, of course, we spent that money. Those boosters were $130 billion. And then we would have $200 billion in reducers, meaning if things get better, then it would drop down, which, of course, is never going to happen in Washington, that they're actually going to move that money down. So that's not likely to happen. So one of the House members who is one of the co-chairs of this and has come together, Representative Josh Gottheimer from New Jersey. The thing is, though, the co-chairs of this are from New York and New Jersey. Very blue states, of course. Yes, there's a Republican in the mix. Tom Reed, who was a Republican of New York, and Representative Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey. But still, they're from blue states. They've wanted in this proposal, this framework, a lot of money for state and local governments, which is a non-starter. That's a non-starter for Republicans in the Senate. So here is what's in it. Here is what his hope is, that we might actually see something pass. Let's listen to Representative Gottheimer.
Congressman, though, let's talk about what's in that plan that you guys have agreed on thus far, but also let's talk about the differences that are out there, because I think right now the betting line is that nothing, unfortunately, is going to happen between now and Election Day.
Sure. So if you look at the major areas that are stumbling blocks, that had been stumbling blocks, and from the negotiators, one, we were able to agree on unemployment insurance up to 100% at $600, up to $600, 100% of wages. That's over 13 weeks, and with a transition period to help states get that set up. We've talked about another stimulus check to families of $1,200 plus $500 per dependent child. A big area that's been tough has been state and local resources for state and local governments, which are critical right now given the revenue holes and the costs they face. So we've talked about an additional $500 billion over the next year. That's in addition to $130 billion that's already in place. So that we really believe would help our state and local governments. We've got child resources for testing, which obviously is critical, for child care, for another round of PPP for small businesses, a second round for small businesses, because so many small businesses continue to hurt. In New Jersey, where I live, 22% of independent restaurants are out of business already. So we need to help our small businesses through this. So we really, and that there's a ton of other areas where we've addressed, we feel like we've taken on the toughest ones and found bipartisan support, which is the key, and I think shown a pathway forward for the negotiators to find agreement. And we're just asking folks to get back to the table, which is so important given what we're facing.
Okay, so that's the bottom line. Again, this is not meant to pass. And the members of the Problem Solvers Caucus have come out and said, we don't expect this to become law at all. There is no chance that this passes. So I want to be very clear. Do not fall for clickbait today saying that this is going to pass. It's not, okay? According to my sources, it's not. It's going nowhere. And I want to quote one of my sources who said, there are no problem solvers anymore. There's just total victory or total defeat. That comes from a highly placed source on this story. There is total victory or total defeat. Do you think for any moment that this is going to pass before Election Day? That there's going to be any kind of a bipartisan support stimulus package before Election Day? No, there's not. And you know why? Because we've got a government shutdown looming in just in very, very short amount of time. And that is the priority. And then they go on vacation on October 9th through Election Day. There is very little time for anything to get done. And by the way, I looked at the congressional calendar this morning. There are no votes in the House scheduled between now and when they go on recess on October 9th. There are 0 votes scheduled. Now, the chances, and I have a call out this morning to find out, is there any chance that Nancy Pelosi brings this to the floor of the House for any kind of vote? We'll see. Even still, if it passes, it goes to the Senate. Now, the reason it's dead on arrival in the Senate, let me break down 3 key reasons why it's dead on arrival in the Senate. Number 1, Senate Republicans have rejected checks to individuals. Okay, Republicans in the Senate do not want direct stimulus checks to the American people. No more $1,200 checks. This would not fly in this new proposal, this new framework. Number 2, the White House has rejected $500 billion for state and local governments. Again, the White House does not want money for state and local governments. And by the way, neither do Republicans in the Senate. They don't want money for state and local governments either. Number 3, extending the unemployment benefits at a level the Republicans have rejected. They're not going to do it. Republicans have already rejected any more than $300 per month because Democrats have already come to them and said, okay, we'd be willing to go to $450. They rejected that. Republicans do not want anything more than the $300 per week in unemployment benefits. Again, this bill is $450 per week. I'm sorry, not a bill yet, this framework. So all of that being said, there's no way that Mitch McConnell has 50 votes in order to get this bill passed in the Senate. Not going to happen, even if it becomes a bill and passes the House. Not going to happen. And it's not going to happen before Election Day. So just to be very clear about that, do not get your hopes up. I need to be real. I don't want you to fall for other clickbait stuff that's out there. It's very important that you understand what's at scale, what's going on, what's going to happen here, and given the congressional calendar and how these things work in Washington. But according to my sources, this is going nowhere. And this quote-unquote Problem Solvers Caucus is just a dog and pony show. I mean, they know they don't have any legs to stand on at this point, and it's just them just trying to. All it is, honestly, it's them trying to save face with their own constituents when they go back to run at the beginning of October. So they're able to go back to their districts and said, "Hey, I was on this Problem Solvers Caucus and I was pushing for this legislation." But you know what? The leadership in the Senate didn't want to pass anything, and here we are. And I know I was on your side. And they get to play good cop, bad cop. That's all this is. Make no mistake about it. But what will happen if we don't get a stimulus plan through? We've got some important news on that front that I want to talk about this morning. There are 3 key areas which will suffer tremendously if we do not get an additional stimulus plan through Congress. Let's talk about the first part, and that's consumption. And that is you buying stuff. This is incredibly important. You buying things is what drives our economy. Our gross domestic product, our GDP, is all tied to you. 70%. You've heard me say it over and over and over again. 70% of our government is fueled by you buying things, okay? By going to Walmart, by going to dinner, by buying Netflix subscriptions, etc. That fuels our economy. And according to Ian Shepherdson, a chief economist this morning, he says what they are doing now, meaning Congress, or rather what they are not doing now, is raising the risk that large bits of the economy will be a wasteland by the time a COVID-19 vaccine comes through. He said that doesn't mean it can never recover. He says it does mean that the recovery will be longer and harder and more painful, and there'll be a lot more misery in the meantime. It seems very counterproductive to me. So he's calling on Congress. A number of economists have come forward over the past few days to say, pass something now. Former Fed Chief Ben Bernanke coming forward, also weighing in on this and saying this is going to be a total disaster if they do not pass additional stimulus. He was appointed under George W. Bush. So the biggest threat is consumption, the amount of things you buy. And the amount of things you buy without you spending money, our economy collapses into the dust. If you don't have stimulus money, if you don't have unemployment benefits, you don't know when you're going to get money again. So are you going to go buy that back-to-school backpack that your child needs? No. I've heard stories about kids just getting plastic bags from the local Kroger and grocery stores, and that's their backpack right now, going to school. How upsetting is that? Anita Markoska and Thomas Simons, they are two economists at Jefferies, they said they've estimated that disposable personal income growth would slow from 9.5% to about 3% if we don't do anything by the end of the year without a deal. 3% personal income growth. If a stimulus package or the $1 trillion or more is passed, then they believe that growth in that disposable personal income would be about 6% at year's end. So it's going to decline from 9 to 3. It will crush businesses. But if we pass a stimulus, at least a $1 trillion, it'll only go to 6. It won't be as bad. It'll still be bad. So what I'm saying is Wall Street is now starting to talk. Wall Street is now starting to put pressure on Congress and the White House to pass stimulus. They're starting to say, look, we were doing fine, but now we're seeing the writing on the wall with permanent job loss and a lack of personal income. That's going to crush us here on Wall Street. Maybe finally we'll get some sort of a stimulus package through because Wall Street is crying. That's what President Trump pays attention to, is Wall Street. That's what all of these guys pay attention to. The second thing that is critical right now is state and local governments under the stimulus. Economists of many stripes have now weighed in on this and said the lack of agreement on federal assistance to cash-strapped state and local governments is crushing them. President Trump has argued that such aid would only bolster blue states, a bailout for poorly run Democratic states, but that's not true. We know a number of Republican states that are in the same situation. It has nothing to do with politics. Former Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke, appointed under George W. Bush, weighed in on this. And he says, he warned in July, by the way, that there would be significantly worse and protracted recession if no additional federal help goes to state and local governments. Imagine this. I mean, think about it. We're laying off firefighters. We're laying off, having to lay off teachers. Municipalities are being crushed. People that are administering unemployment benefits, losing their jobs, furloughed workers up and down the line at the state and local government level because there's no state aid. So again, a part of this this new bill or this new framework that's being rolled out by the problem solvers includes that amount of money for state and local governments, but the Senate will not support that. Upwards of 20 of them have already said we will not vote for anything like that. So this thing would be dead on arrival. So state and local governments, and meanwhile, the rich get richer and the poor get crushed. Here's the third reason that this is going to be absolutely debilitating to our economy, because depending on the permanent damage, right now, as this deepens, this permanent damage deepens, which is not good, there's a growing disparity between the wealthy and the poor. As the middle class has just been destroyed in all of this, you're just going to have more of that bifurcation, according to Julia Coronado, who's the founder of the Macro Policy Perspectives and an economist. She says, you're just going to have more bifurcation with wealthy people and professional jobs in the service sector doing just fine. Wealthy people will do just fine. And then a lot of people in the working class service sector will go deep into distress if we do not pass another round of stimulus. That is the update on the stimulus. New Problem Solvers framework out today. Will likely go nowhere. The effort of this, of course, is to get people back to the table. Here is, again, Josh Gottheimer, who talks about maybe whether or not he'll actually get any movement, whether people could agree on this.
I think right now the betting line is that nothing, unfortunately, is going to happen between now and Election Day.
Sure. So if you look at the major areas that are stumbling blocks, that had been stumbling blocks from the negotiators, one, we were able to agree on unemployment insurance, up to 100% at up to $600, 100% of wages. That's over 13 weeks, and with a transition period to help states get that set up. We've talked about another stimulus check to families of $1,200 plus $500 per dependent child.
So those are some of the sticking points that will still be sticking points in the Republican-controlled Senate. Again, good on them for trying to get people back to the table. But also, let's talk reality of politics right now. This close to the election. And with them going on vacation on October 9th to go back and campaign, we've got a government shutdown, which is the first priority, which is in the way, and 0 votes scheduled on the House legislative calendar. This is not going anywhere. And I will eat a plant. I will eat a house plant if this goes anywhere. If this becomes law, mark my words right here, I will buy a house plant and eat it. Just not a poinsettia. Those are poisonous, right? That's the latest on the stimulus front. Smash that like button, please, and subscribe to our channel. If you're new here, I want to thank you for subscribing. And also, don't forget to sign up for our daily morning newsletter. We're giving away our brand new sweatshirts, by the way. So if you subscribe today and you refer a friend, you can win and your friend can win our brand new sweatshirts, our Conscious Collection sweatshirts, which I'm super excited about. Here they are. This is what they look like. They're eco-friendly, and they are available now. We're going to be holding a raffle for those of you that refer people on our newsletter. So simply to go to morninginvest.com and sign up for the free newsletter. Thank you so much for your support of that show and our newsletter. I appreciate it.